I still remember the way her voice cut through the evening air that night, cold and final, like she'd already decided my fate for the whole block. Serve the association properly, or sell your house and leave. Rachel, those were the words HOA President Vivian Caldwell, our very own neighborhood Karen in a pastel cardigan and clipboard, spat at me as I stood in my driveway in Willow Creek Estates, still wearing my damp hospital scrubs, shoes squelching from the rain. I had just pulled a brutal 12-hour shift, comforting families, dodging co-blues, skipping every meal so I could get home before dark. All I wanted was a hot shower, maybe a quiet dinner with Mark, and 5 minutes without someone measuring my grass. Instead, I walked straight into her ambush. Vivian was waiting right there at the curb like a self-appointed warden, her silver bob perfectly set even in the drizzle. She jabbed a finger at my lawn. Why is this blade exactly 0.25 inches over regulation? You know the covenant. Dear, property values don't maintain themselves. Then she pointed to my trash bins. And those lids aren't aligned at a perfect 45-degree angle. Last week's mulch was the wrong shade of brown. Honestly, Rachel, it's like you don't even care about the community. No, how was your shift? No, you look exhausted. Just pure, polished venom wrapped in that fake sweet HOA smile she practiced in the mirror every morning. I forced a tired laugh that didn't reach my eyes. Vivian, I've been at the hospital since 6 a.m. The mulch was on sale. It's still mulch. She tilted her head like I'd just confessed to murder. Mark stepped out onto the porch in his slippers, coffee mug in hand, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Vivian turned to him with that buttery tone she reserved for men who nodded along. Mark, darling, you understand. We're all in this together for Serenity Pines, Willow Creek. Rules keep us civilized. He didn't even look at me. Just muttered. She's right. Ratch. It's not that hard to follow the handbook. Something inside me went very still. 8 years we'd lived here. 8 years of me quietly organizing the block parties she took credit for, trimming hedges at midnight so no one got fined, even driving her elderly mother to doctor appointments when Vivian couldn't get away from board duties. And now this. I murmured something polite about fixing it tomorrow and headed inside, but the rain felt colder on my skin than it should have. Later that night, after Vivian finally left in her shiny white SUV plastered with HOA President stickers, Mark sat at the kitchen island, scrolling his phone. I was folding scrubs at the counter when he spoke without looking up. You either fully serve the board's requests or we start looking at listings. It's that simple. Vivian says the whole street is talking. Sir, the board? As if I hadn't already been the unpaid coordinator. The secret fixer. The one who actually kept this place from looking like a war zone while Vivian barked about decency and standards. I stared at him. The same man who once surprised me with weekend getaways before the covenants swallowed us whole. He finally met my eyes. She's family now. Rachel, the HOA is family. It's your duty as a resident. Duty. The word tasted like metal. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just walked to our bedroom, pulled out the small black suitcase we use for hospital overnights, and started packing. Jeans, a few scrubs, my toothbrush, the emergency cash I'd been hiding in my sock drawer for months. Mark watched from the hallway like I'd grown a second head. Vivian must have texted him already. Her smug little smirk was practically audible through the walls. I zipped the suitcase and rolled it past him. He finally found words. Wait, you're seriously leaving? Over grass. I stopped at the door, hand on the knob. Rain hammered the roof like applause for my exit. You gave me a choice, I said quietly. I made mine. He opened his mouth, closed it. Vivian's voice floated in from somewhere in my memory. A proper resident knows her place. I stepped outside. The cold drops hit my face, but I didn't flinch. I rolled that suitcase past the rose bushes I planted the year we moved in, past the approved by HOA plaque on our mailbox, past the gate with its ridiculous wrought iron rules sign. And I didn't look back. I had no plan. $87 in my checking account after rent and fines. A motel key in my pocket for my last extra shift. All I knew was that I deserved more than being treated like the neighborhood made in my own home. I deserved more than choosing between my sanity and a clipboard-wielding tyrant who called herself the community. And in that moment, I chose me. People always warn you about red flags early in relationships. But what about the ones wrapped in beige stucco and for the property value smiles? When Mark and I first bought in Willow Creek, it felt like a dream. He held my hand during the closing, whispered we'd raise kids here, grow old on this street. I was fresh out of nursing school, exhausted but hopeful, and he was the calm anchor who remembered my coffee order and fixed the leaky faucet without being asked. We dated 2 years, married in the little chapel down the road, and for the first few years the house felt like ours. Weekend barbecues, late-night talks on the porch, even talks about maybe starting a family once we weren't drowning in student loans. Then Vivian Caldwell got elected HOA president. It was supposed to be temporary, just until they found someone else. She'd fallen on the sidewalk and used the settlement money to buy loyalty votes. A few weeks of her helping turned into years of iron-fisted control. At first I tried. I really did. I volunteered for every committee she created, baked the cookies for meetings, even rewrote the entire neighborhood directory when she complained the font was too modern. I thought kindness would earn respect. But Vivian didn't want respect. She wanted worship. She'd rearrange the community bulletin board without asking. Critique how I dress for work. Those scrubs are too tight. Dear, you'll tempt the wrong kind of attention. She measured my lawn with a literal ruler at dawn, left passive-aggressive notes about my holiday lights being 2 days late coming down. Once she told me my laugh at the block party was too loud for a woman who claims to care about decorum. Mark never saw it. Or maybe he just chose not to. When I'd bring it up after another $250 fine for improper mulch placement, he'd sigh and say, "She's just old-fashioned. It's not personal." Then he'd turn up the TV and the conversation died. I picked up extra shifts to cover the fines and the suggested donations to her favorite causes. I cooked for every potluck, cleaned the common areas while she sat in her golf cart barking orders. Still never enough. One evening, I made her favorite lemon bars for the annual meeting. She took one bite, sniffed, and announced to the whole room, "Too tart. Some people just don't understand balance." Mark said nothing. That was the night I locked myself in the bathroom and cried into a towel so the neighbors wouldn't hear. I felt like a ghost in my own cul-de-sac. At the hospital, patients called me Angel. Colleagues asked me to lunch. Here I was, just her, the one whose grass offended the covenant, whose bins weren't aligned, whose very existence threatened property values. But deep down something shifted. Quietly, like a seed cracking concrete, I started saving $20 from every paycheck. Nothing dramatic, just enough for the plan I hadn't admitted to myself yet. I couldn't keep living under her thumb. And the next time she made me choose between my dignity and this beige prison, I wouldn't hesitate. The rain was light that night. My suitcase wheels bumped along the sidewalk as I left the life I'd built for 8 years. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't breathe another second inside that house. The motel smelled like bleach and broken dreams, but the door locked. First night, I sat on the edge of the bed in my scrubs, hands shaking, checking my phone for messages that never came. "No, are you safe?" from Mark. No apology from Vivian. That silence hurt worse than any fine, but it also felt like air after years underwater. I didn't have to apologize for existing. I was alone, but I was finally visible to myself. The next morning, I went straight to work and begged for every extra shift they could give me. My supervisor took one look at my face and added me to nights without questions. For 5 straight days, I ran on coffee and spite. sleeping in a motel by day, living on vending machine crackers. One night in the break room, I finally cracked. My coworker Maya, loud, colorful scrubs Maya, found me curled on the couch. "You okay?" "Ratch." I tried to laugh it off. "Just tired." She sat down, handed me half her sandwich. "You've worn the same 2 scrubs all week." Laundry emergency? That did it. The quiet, tired tears came. Maya didn't pry. She just said, "I've got a spare room. No rent until you're steady." Next day, I checked out of the motel and moved into her bright little apartment that smelled like cinnamon and second chances. The spare room had mismatched pillows and a blow-up mattress, but it felt like a palace. No measuring tapes at dawn. No notes about my laugh volume. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. Maya let me be quiet when I needed it and made me laugh when I forgot how. I still hurt, but I was starting to feel human again. Meanwhile, back in Willow Creek, the rumors reached me through Maya's friend who still lived 2 streets over. Vivian had expected me to crawl back within a week. When a month passed and my for sale sign stayed planted, things began to unravel in the most deliciously petty ways. First, the spring fling committee collapsed. I'd been the one who actually booked the bounce house, coordinated the vendors, and made sure every lawn was inspection ready. Without me, Vivian tried to run it herself. The bounce house company showed up with the wrong size. Half the vendors bailed when she argued over contracts. Residents posted photos on the neighborhood app of kids crying because the event was a muddy disaster. Vivian's response? A mass email blaming certain former residents who abandoned their duties. Then the landscaping started failing. My old next-door neighbor texted me a picture, dandelions everywhere, because no one knew how to run the community mower schedule I'd created. Fines started piling on everyone, including Vivian's own house when her own mother's garden gnomes, strictly forbidden, mysteriously appeared overnight. Mark tried to keep up with our yard. Poor guy had never mowed in his life. He posted a sad little photo on the app asking for help, and the comments were brutal. "Where's Rachel when we need her?" The HOA president's rules are destroying us. Even the mailman started leaving passive-aggressive notes about overflowing bins. One night, Vivian slipped on her own driveway after a rainstorm. The same driveway she'd fined me twice for not power washing properly. She lay there yelling for help. But Mark's phone was on silent, and the neighbors had learned to ignore her screams. She finally dragged herself inside, bruised and furious, and blamed the entire block for poor community spirit. Mark snapped. According to the neighbor gossip, he actually raised his voice for the first time. "Maybe if you hadn't driven Rachel away, we wouldn't be living like this." Vivian tried her usual, she was dramatic line. Mark shut her down cold. "I was wrong to let you poison everything." I'll admit the text I received that night made me smile in the dark. Not cruel joy, just the quiet satisfaction of watching a house of cards built on other people's backs finally tip. Mark had never defended me when it mattered. Now that the lawn was his problem and the fines were his paycheck, he suddenly remembered I existed. But he still didn't call. Not yet. Maybe shame had finally found him. I was settling into Maya's place, saving every extra shift penny, opening my own account for the first time in years. No more suggested donations to Vivian's vanity projects. No more tiptoeing. The walls were thin, but the laughter was real. One evening, I came home to find Maya had left me a note on the fridge. "You don't have to serve anyone anymore. You're home." I cried again, but these were different tears. It was a Tuesday when my phone exploded. 50 missed calls from Mark. 8 voicemails. I sat on Maya's couch after another long shift, legs like lead, and hit play on the first one. His voice cracked with panic. "Rachel, please pick up. It's Vivian." She collapsed at the board meeting. Chest pains. They took her to your hospital. I didn't know who else to call. The next messages were worse. Him crying, apologizing for everything, whispering, "I don't know how to do this without you." The last one broke something in me. The whole street is falling apart. I see now what you carried. Please. I stared at the screen a long time. Part of me wanted to delete every message. Vivian had never shown me kindness. Mark had watched me shrink for years. But I wasn't heartless. Tired. Angry. Done, but not heartless. So I took a cab to the ER I worked in every day. I didn't know what I'd say. I just know I needed to see it for myself. When I walked through those familiar sliding doors, it felt like stepping into a parallel universe. Mark was hunched in the waiting room. Hair wild. Shirt wrinkled. Eyes red from no sleep. He looked up and froze. Rachel, he whispered like I was a ghost. He stood slowly. Thank you for coming. I didn't know. I cut him off. Where is she? He pointed toward the observation area. I walked past without another word. Vivian lay in the bed, pale, hooked to monitors, looking smaller than the woman who once towered over me with a ruler. When she saw me, her eyes widened, not with gratitude, but something closer to fear mixed with regret. She didn't speak. I didn't stay long, just long enough to confirm she was stable, breathing, awake. Then I turned and left the room. Mark caught me in the hallway. Rachel, I'm so sorry. For everything. I didn't realize how much you did until you were gone. The fines, the events, even the damn trash schedule, it's all chaos. I looked at him, really looked, and felt nothing but finished. I came to make sure she was okay. That's all. He tried again. We can fix this. The board is voting to relax some rules. Vivian's talking about stepping down. I shook my head. Don't call me unless it's life or death. And this wasn't one. I walked away. Outside, the sun was setting in soft oranges and pinks. For the first time in years, the warmth on my skin felt like freedom instead of another violation notice. 3 days later, another call came, not from Mark, but from one of the doctors I worked with. Vivian had taken a turn. Stress-related complications, refusing treatment, barely eating. She's asking for you specifically, he said gently. I stood in Maya's kitchen, staring at the floor. Why now? After everything? Part of me wanted to hang up. But another part, the part that still believed in closure, said yes. While I walked back into that room, Vivian was sitting up, frail and quiet, staring out the window. Mark was in the chair beside her, looking like he'd aged 10 years. He stood when he saw me. Vivian turned slowly. No glare this time. Just exhaustion. I didn't think you'd come, she rasped. I stayed standing. I wasn't planning to. Silence stretched. Then she spoke the words I never thought I'd hear. I treated you badly. I was afraid. Afraid of strong women who didn't need my approval. I used the rules to control everything because I couldn't control my own life. I crossed my arms. You didn't just treat me badly. You belittled me in front of the whole neighborhood. You fined me for existing. You turned my husband against me and called it community standards. I organized your events, fixed your messes, kept your precious property values from tanking. And not once did you say thank you. Mark looked at the floor. Vivian nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. I see it now. I'm sorry. The apology I once would have killed for landed flat. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like the final page of a chapter 1 was ready to close. I forgive you, I said quietly. Not for you. For me. Mark stepped forward. Rachel, I've changed. I see everything now. Please come home. We can start over. I looked at him and felt only peace. No, Mark, you didn't lose me the night I left. You lost me every time you chose her rules over me. Every time you stayed silent while she chipped away at my worth. He didn't argue, just stood there pale and broken. I walked to the door, paused, and looked back one last time. Take care of her. Not because you owe her, but because someday you'll want someone to care for you when you're old and scared. Then I left. Outside the hospital, the world felt huge and bright. No covenants, no clipboards, no measuring my every move. I smiled, a real one, and kept walking toward whatever came next. But the story didn't end there. Because when word got out that I'd visited, the entire neighborhood app exploded. Residents who'd been too afraid to speak started posting receipts. Screenshots of Vivian's secret finds funneled into her own beautification fund. Recordings of her mocking neighbors behind their backs. Even photos of her own yard violations she'd hidden for years. The board called an emergency meeting. For the first time in Willow Creek history, residents showed up with pitchforks, metaphorical ones. Of course, because actual pitchforks would violate Section 4.2. Vivian tried to defend herself with the same polished smile that had worked for years. I only ever wanted what was best for property values. But the crowd wasn't buying it. My old neighbor, Mrs. Delaney, stood up and read aloud every ridiculous fine I'd ever received. Rachel carried this community on her back while you carried clipboards. And now you're surprised it collapsed? The vote was unanimous. Vivian was removed as president effective immediately. The new board, a mix of actual humans, voted to repeal half the absurd rules within a week. Grass could be 3 inches. Holiday lights could stay up until January. People could actually laugh out loud without written permission. Mark texted me the news. The house is still yours if you want it. No strings. I stared at the message a long time, then deleted it. The for sale sign stayed up. Maya and I started looking at apartments together, something with a balcony and 0 covenants. I kept working my shifts, kept saving, kept growing. Weeks later, I drove past Willow Creek just to see. The lawns were a little wilder. Kids played in the street without fear of tickets. Someone had planted bright flowers in front of Vivian's old house, flowers that definitely weren't on the approved color palette. Vivian herself had moved to a condo downtown. Last I heard, she was on a condo board, already measuring someone else's balcony. Some people never learn, but I had. I learned that real community doesn't need rulers and clipboards. It needs people who show up, who care without keeping score, who laugh too loud and live too freely. I learned that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. And I learned that the sweetest revenge isn't screaming or suing. It's walking away quietly, letting the whole fragile system collapse under its own weight. Then watching from afar as everyone finally understands what you were worth all along. The funny thing about leaving a place that treated you like furniture is how quickly they realized the furniture was holding up the roof. After my second hospital visit, the texts started coming in waves. First from neighbors I barely knew. Rachel, the block party is a disaster without you. Then from the new interim board. We're revising the covenants. Would you consult? Even Mark tried once more with a long voicemail full of "I see now," and I was blind. I listened to every word while drinking coffee on Maya's balcony, then blocked the number. Not out of anger anymore, just because some chapters don't need sequels. Meanwhile, the chaos in Willow Creek reached legendary status. Someone started a group chat called Life After Vivian, and it blew up with before and after photos. Before, perfect beige everything. Residents tiptoeing. After, wildflowers in yards. Political signs gasp. Kids riding bikes without helmets of shame. The city even sent a letter praising the neighborhood for finally complying with actual safety codes instead of Vivian's made-up ones. Property values? They went up. Turns out people want to live where they can breathe. Vivian tried one last power play. She showed up at the emergency board meeting in full Karen armor, pearls, clipboard, and a printed copy of the original covenants. She stood at the podium and delivered a 10-minute speech about tradition and the children, and how removing her rules would lead to anarchy. The room was silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then Mrs. Delaney stood up again. The only anarchy was the fear you spread. Vivian. Rachel left, and the sky didn't fall. In fact, the sun came out. The applause was deafening. Vivian's face went the color of an unapproved mulch. She stormed out muttering about lawsuits. But the new board had already collected enough evidence of her financial funny business to shut that down fast. Mark sold the house eventually. He moved closer to his job and started therapy, or so the grapevine said. I hope he finds whatever peace he's looking for. Me? I signed a lease on a new apartment with Maya last week. 2 bedrooms, big windows, a balcony where I can drink coffee without anyone measuring the angle of my mug. No HOA, no fines. Just me, my scrubs, and the freedom to laugh as loud as I want. Sometimes late at night, I still think about that rainy evening and the suitcase. I wonder if Vivian ever understood what she lost. Not just a volunteer, not just a resident, but the last person willing to carry everyone else's burdens while smiling. Probably not. Karens rarely do. They rewrite the story in their heads until they're the victim and everyone else is the villain with the wrong color lawn. But I don't dwell. I've got shifts to work, friends to laugh with, and a life that finally feels like mine. The neighborhood learned a hard lesson. You can't build paradise on fear and measuring tapes. Real community grows when people are allowed to be people. And the sweetest justice isn't watching the Karen fall. It's standing tall in the sunshine she tried to keep from you. I still drive past Willow Creek, sometimes on my way to the hospital. The for sale sign on our old house is gone now. A new family moved in. Young couple with a toddler and a yard full of bright plastic toys that would have given Vivian stroke. They wave when they see me. I wave back. No hard feelings. Just proof that life keeps going. Greener and louder and freer than any covenant ever allowed. And me? I'm finally the main character in my own story. No more serving. No more leaving. Just living. Out loud. 1 year later, I got the last text I ever expected. It came from an unknown number, but the wording gave her away immediately. Rachel, this is Vivian. I've been reflecting. The new board has asked me to extend a formal apology on behalf of the association. I was wrong. You were the heart of Willow Creek. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive. Attached was a screenshot of the revised covenants. Now only 2 pages instead of 27. And my name was mentioned in the acknowledgments as the resident whose quiet strength inspired reform. I stared at it for a long minute, then laughed until Maya came running from the other room, thinking I was choking. I didn't reply. Some apologies are just performance art for the new regime. Vivian had moved on to terrorizing a condo board downtown. According to the neighborhood app, one still lurked on for entertainment. Last post said she tried to ban flavored coffee in the common lounge because the smell offends the aesthetic. Some leopards never change their spots. They just find new clipboards. Mark reached out one final time through a mutual friend. He was dating someone new, someone who apparently laughed too loud and planted unauthorized flowers. He wanted me to know he was happy and hoped I was too. I sent back a single thumbs up emoji. Closure doesn't always need paragraphs. Sometimes a tiny yellow icon says everything. My new life is quieter in the best way. I still work nights at the hospital, but now I come home to an apartment that smells like whatever I feel like cooking. No one criticizes the softness of my rice or the brightness of my scrubs. Maya and I throw tiny dinner parties where guests are allowed to use colorful plates and tell loud stories. Last weekend, we had the old Willow Creek neighbors over, the ones brave enough to break the old rules. We laughed about the ruler incidents, the mulch wars, the night Vivian's gnomes mysteriously appeared. Mrs. Delaney raised a glass to Rachel, who taught us that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. I clinked my glass and felt the last piece of weight lift. I wasn't bitter anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was free in a way no HOA could ever understand. The lesson I carry now is simple and sharp. Never let anyone, husband, neighbor, clipboard queen, convince you that your worth is measured in inches of grass or shades of beige. Your worth is in the way you show up for people without keeping score. The way you survive shifts that would break most humans. The way you choose yourself when every voice says you should serve. Willow Creek is thriving these days. The lawns are still mostly green, but now they're dotted with real personality, kids' chalk drawings, wildflower beds, even the occasional political sign that doesn't get fined into oblivion. Property values climbed. People smile at each other instead of side-eyeing trash bins. The new president sends out monthly emails that start with "How can we help?" instead of "You are in violation." Funny how removing one Karen fixed what years of meetings never could. Sometimes I wonder if Vivian ever drives past her old kingdom and feels the sting. Probably not. Karens rewrite history faster than HOAs can print new handbooks. But I don't need her to feel it. I feel the opposite every single day. The lightness of no longer carrying everyone else's rules on my back. So if you're watching this and you live under an HOA Karen right now, hear me. Start saving that $20. Start noticing the pattern. And when the ultimatum comes, serve or leave, remember you always have a third choice. Leave on your own terms, with your head high and your suitcase packed with dignity. The neighborhood might crumble for a minute. The clipboard might tremble. But you'll rise. Louder, brighter, and finally, gloriously, free. And that, my friends, is the sweetest revenge a quiet nurse from Willow Creek could ever ask for. The end.